Hey guys, it's Wahima, but just call me Wah. Melanated! Welcome to my recap slash review of 90 Day Fiancé Season 5. This is episode 21, which I refer to as like episode 8 because I'm going in actual order of the series and not the order, I guess, of the overarching series. I'm not sure why this is episode 21, girl. This episode is called Out of Nowhere. Okay, so let me just start with backwards because I just finished rewatching it. And thank you so much to those of you who watched it live with me. I went live on Sunday. I couldn't keep the video up because I basically showed the entire episode and it's copyright infringement. I mean, there's only so far the Fair Use Act will go. So I leave it up for maybe a couple hours after I film it and then I go on ahead and take it down. So I'll let you guys know if I'm gonna go live or not. It'll be 8 p.m. Pacific time. Unfortunately, for those of you who are on the East Coast, you won't see it, but I will definitely try to do a follow-up video like this one right now so that you guys can comment down below and we can have like an more in-depth discussion after I've like thought about it and marinated on what happened in the next episode. Okay, so let's start backwards with Josh and Aika because that's the last thing I just finished watching. It starts off with Josh and his friend Joe having lunch or dinner somewhere and them talking mess about Aika. Josh is telling Joe that Aika and him are fighting. Aika threw out the fact that she wants to go home. They're arguing over the ring and about fertility stuff because, as we know, and they're going to talk about it in the next episode, for whatever reason Josh can't have children right now and we're thinking it's because of a vasectomy, and in the like little snippet of next episode we find out that it is because he's had a vasectomy. And one of the things that him and Aika talked about before she moved here was having kids, and he said he was on board with having kids, but he didn't tell her that he had made it so that he couldn't have kids. But anyways, he's like gabbing to his friend about his relationship issues, which he really honestly shouldn't, and then Joe takes it upon himself to have a comment about it, and the comment that Joe has is just so intrusive and just he feels like there's red flags because she's talking about wanting to go home and that she's here for all the wrong reasons. The thing is though, I really do feel like Josh promised her things that he was not able to fulfill just to have her by his side, and now he's playing the victim and she's just like, wait, we had conversation and you said you'd be down to do this, and now Josh is telling his friend that Aika doesn't know if she's gonna stay or not, and the friend is like, well, I never liked her and blah blah blah. Next scene we have with them, they go to the gun range, Josh and Aika, and for whatever reason TLC makes Josh invite Joe, so Joe comes and they go and they start to shoot guns, and Aika's never shot a gun before and she's like, you know, like, oh, every time the gun pops she's like, ooh, ah, and I would be the exact same way, girl. She actually does a pretty good job. When it's commented that she's done a good job, Joe pipes in and says, well, maybe we should put the target back further. Let's see how she does then. They're just like hating from the jump. Then Josh and Joe leave Aika in the gun range shooting area and they go off to get more guns to practice shooting. And while they're out there, Joe takes it upon himself to start whispering a conversation to Josh about Aika and how he doesn't trust Aika and that he doesn't think Aika's right for him and she's here for all the wrong reasons and couples shouldn't argue. And then Aika comes from the back area to the friends like, hey babe, like what's up, what new gun did you choose? And then Josh is like, oh hey babe, we're just whatever, and Joe jumps in and says, actually I don't like to be fake and I just want to let you know that we are talking about you. I'm talking about my concerns about you to my friend. It's just highly inappropriate. He is now telling Aika that Josh has divulged some personal things, personal conversations that they've had to him, and now Joe feels like it's his place as his best friend to step up and talk to Aika. I mean, why is he putting so much onus on Aika like she's the one who said, hey, I'm gonna move to the United States? Like, Josh wasn't prepared to move to the Philippines, so he said for her to come to the United States and live with him. So he needs to provide certain things for her. This is what we all understand, but for whatever reason, Joe feels like Aika should accept whatever it is that Josh throws out to her. And she's like, no, I don't have to accept that and I won't. And furthermore, it's none of your business. Couples fight, we had an argument, and I don't need to be lectured to by you. Like, what is Joe's real stake in this? Nothing. All it is having to help his friend with a broken heart, and even so, at the end of the day, that has nothing to do with Aika and everything to do with Josh. So if he's yelling at anybody or telling anybody about themselves, he should be talking to Josh and Josh only. Period. point blank. If I were Aika, I would seriously consider absolutely going back, and like not in a like, oh, I want to move back, like a pouty way, in an actual like, I don't need this ish, I'm moving back. I don't need your best friend coming over and talking to me like I'm a child. Like, I'm a grown woman, we're grown people, and you're 42, I'm 36. We don't need your best friend to jump in and have conversation with us and talk about our relationship. So speaking of a friend or someone else jumping into a relationship, let's just go on ahead and jump to David and Annie, because I honestly, let me just start from the beginning. Okay, so this is their second day in LA, in the United States, and they're having a barbecue. Chris and Nikki are throwing a barbecue for Annie. Nikki invites her brother Antonio over. They're having dinner and everything is great. David starts to drink, and he drinks too much, and he gets a little too tipsy, and they're all sitting outside with their feet in the jacuzzi. It's dark. They're all talking, having conversation, and then like David interrupts with some like babble. And Nikki is like, what are you talking about? And he's just like babbling and saying things, and it's just like, what's going on? He makes some joke. Antonio's like, what are you talking about? And David's like, oh no, it's just a white guy joke, and like no one gets it. And Annie is increasingly becoming more uncomfortable because she notices that David is drunk, and she's having flashbacks to their bachelor/bachelorette party where he got drunk and it was too much for her. So she's sitting there awkward and she's quiet. And then Nikki and Antonio decide to step way out of pocket and start to tell David about himself, start to embarrass David in front of Annie, start to lecture Annie about the fact that she's with this guy, and lecture David about the fact that he's hurting Annie's feeling. This conversation needed to not happen when alcohol was in anyone's system. If they really felt strongly and wanted to help Annie, then maybe they should have had a conversation with her, A, in 3 months after she's been here for a while, and B, when everyone is sober and maybe David isn't around. But the way that Antonio and Nikki like go at Annie in the guise of trying to help her is just so inappropriate. And I understand that this is Nikki's house, but you don't have free reign to make people feel uncomfortable because they're staying in your house. Furthermore, Annie is already slightly uncomfortable because she knows that Nikki doesn't want her there. She knows that there's a time limit on them being in the house, and this is day 2 and she's already being talked to and lectured like this. Something happens and Antonio and Nikki decide to go into the house because David is being extra. And the whole time this is happening, Chris is sitting right there saying absolutely nothing. So when they get up and go into the house with Annie, Chris turns to David and is like, hey, are you okay, bud? He's like, no, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm just drinking or whatever. So then they go into the house. David and Chris stay outside. Nikki, Annie, and Antonio go in the inside of the house, and again Antonio lays in on Annie and starts to lecture her about her choices and why did she choose to be with this man and blah blah blah, just basically talking mess to her, making her probably feel terrible about her choices, more so than she already feels. Like, she doesn't have these thoughts in her head. And he's just like, him and Nikki are just doing the most. Like, it's really inappropriate, the conversation that they're having with her at this time. And then David comes in and hears probably a snippet of the conversation and makes some terrible joke about Antonio possibly actually wanting to sleep with Chris. This sends Antonio to the stratosphere for what I feel to be no reason. I get that it's disrespectful and it's rude, but it isn't as disrespectful and as rude as Antonio is making it out to be. Perhaps to him, but to me, it's not. Seeing as how what he did and how he's already been speaking to David, I feel like it's within the lines of what's going to happen when you feel that you can lecture this 48-year-old man on his choices when you're not even a part of his family. You feel like you can lecture him and his wife, in both of them sitting there in a jacuzzi and telling them about themselves, but when he comes in and makes an inappropriate comment, you want to rise to the stratosphere as though like you didn't do anything to provoke that. No. Now, that is Antonio's business if that's how he wants to pop off, but I feel like it was very inappropriate and I was a little embarrassed. And I know Nikki wasn't, because she felt like that's who her brother is. But me personally, Juan Melino, I get very embarrassed when my family starts to act out in public, so I can't even handle it. And you know there's like a lot of people that are in that room, like all the cameramen, all the PAs, like there are a lot of people in that room. It wasn't just the 3 of them. And so it's just like, it was wildly inappropriate to me, the way that Antonio was talking. Like, he's like, oh, David, can't you see she's uncomfortable? Like, this is not your place, Antonio. It's definitely not your place to pull Annie aside and lecture her. So anyways, David comes in and says that comment to Antonio. Antonio then like starts calling him like a penguin and calling him all out his name, calling him all these names. Like, it's just so extra. And so many of you guys, when it was happening and I was doing the live show, were like, that's what he gets. And yeah, it was funny and da-da-da-da. I'm like, no, it just made Antonio look bad. Nobody needs for 25-year-old Antonio to be lecturing two people that he barely knows, especially Annie. It's just so inappropriate, guys. I can't say that word enough. That's how strongly I feel about it. So after that row, Nikki goes up to Annie, who's like crying in the living room, and it's like, how do you feel? I'm like, how do you feel? You let your brother cause a scene. Like, you let this thing happen. What do you mean, how does she feel? Of course she's embarrassed and like mortified. And Annie's like, I don't feel good. And he's like, well, and Nikki's like, well, you know, just to let you know that this needs to stop. And David's behavior was wildly uncalled for and very disrespectful. And I'm going to have a talk with Chris. You can stay here, but if something doesn't change with David, David can't stay here. Annie can't stay there without David. Like, what? This whole thing is ridiculous. And all based off of the fact that after they finished telling him off, he came out and was like, oh, so you want to have sex with Chris? And like, that set this whole thing off, and now David is the most disrespectful person in the world. And I don't even want to defend David, but the way Nikki and Antonio behaved, it just really was very uncouth to me. Then after that, the next day, or maybe the next couple days afterwards, David and the producers decide to take Annie to the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And I mean, honestly, guys, if you've ever been to the Hollywood Walk of Fame, it's like mighty boring. It's just like a bunch of stars all over the street, all down Sunset or all down Hollywood, and like, okay, girl, it's not as big a deal as it once was, right? Okay, good. We all now have the internet. We don't need to see anybody's star. So Annie's really excited. They go into a sex shop. She's like, oh my god, this is illegal in Thailand, and it's like big dildos and all kinds of stuff everywhere, and she's just like so shocked. So that was fun. And then David's like, I couldn't let her leave LA without seeing an LA sunset, and they go to the beach, the cold beach in LA, and watch the sunset. Like, they don't have prettier sunsets in Thailand. Shout out to whoever made that comment during the live commentary. And so then Annie makes David say he won't drink until the wedding, and if he does drink, he doesn't have to get drunk. But really, she doesn't understand that he just can't drink. Like, he's not somebody who understands moderation. But that's something that she's young. She doesn't understand that. She doesn't know that when someone has an alcohol problem, they can't just drink in moderation. Usually they have to kind of stop drinking in order to get into their brain what moderation is. But yeah, so they're seemingly okay. But all of Annie's worries are coming true. So I really, really hope the best, and I hope their episode next week is a little bit better. Alright, so let's move on to Molly and Luis. So we begin this episode with Molly and Luis, actually. And Luis is sitting on the couch with Jess, and Luis is showing Jess some pictures of the Dominican Republic. I guess he's homesick, you know, to prove that he's homesick to the people. We all know he is. Molly walks in and is like, what are y'all doing? Luis is like, looking at pictures of my country. And Jess is like, oh, we're just looking at the beach. And she's like, alright, I'm gonna make a phone call. So she goes outside to talk to her dad, and you can tell that Molly is trying not to cry. She goes on the phone, she calls her dad, he doesn't respond, and she's like, hello dad, just want to let you know that we're getting married and we really want you there. You can tell that she just wants to know if he's going to be there, if he's going to be able to walk her down the aisle. It's really what she wants to know. And Molly comes back in. The three of them have a conversation, and Molly and Jess try to make excuses for the dad and say that the dad didn't say that he was totally against the wedding, is that he was thinking about it. Luis is like, hold up, wait a minute, stop faking the funk. My dad talks to me every single day. Molly, how often have you tried to call your dad and he hasn't responded? He didn't say that he didn't think or he needed to whatever. He said no, that he wasn't into this marriage and he wasn't coming. So stop trying to make excuses for him. And both Jess and Molly are like, well, you don't know him, and that's how he is, and he's got a tough skin, and he's really soft on the inside. And the thing is, and I think I saw this on Auntie, I think Auntie's advice, I think Auntie mentioned this. She said that coming from the father's perspective, Molly probably hasn't had the best judgment when it comes to men, especially because she's unwed and has two kids by two different fathers. And so perhaps Papa is just like over all of Molly's bad decision, and he just sees her marrying Luis as another random bad decision. I mean, on top of the fact that he's probably racist, and on top of the fact that he's definitely a bigot. So it really hurts Molly's feelings, and I do feel bad for her because, I mean, from our perspective, we want her dad to be there, but from his perspective, I can completely see that. The thing is though, like, at the end of the day, Molly is still successful in taking care of her kids. So for me, if Papa was taking care of them, I could see him being as upset or as like annoyed as he is. But the fact is that Molly is a boss bee. Like, she has her own business and she's doing things to make money for her family. So regardless of if her love life hasn't been on track, to me, love life and relationship life doesn't matter as much as like work life and how you make your money. I think to me that is most important. As long as you're not a burden on somebody financially, like, girl, you can do whatever you want. That's the way I feel. So then we have the next scene where Molly and Luis go to lunch, and Molly mentions that Luis is not helping with the wedding and that it's overwhelming for her because she's never planned a wedding. And Luis is basically like, look, you're spending a lot of money and time and energy for 3 hours and some toasting. Like, we don't need all this, and if that's what you want, then you go on ahead and do it. It's the woman's job to plan the wedding, and that's fine. I'm not going to be involved. And he's just like very hands-off about it. What he is hands-on about is his bachelor party, because he honestly is like, look, my bachelor party is going to be my day off from being in this family, my day off from watching Kinsley. Like, that is my day to be me and who I am and who I was in the Dominican Republic. And Molly is a little bit like, well, you know that you still have to come home and you don't need to be like, I understand that you want to go to the strip club and do that, that's fine, but don't be taking any unnecessary numbers, don't be acting a fool, come home on time. And he's just like, no, you do what you do and I'll do what I do, don't worry about it. We'll meet somewhere in the middle. And she's just like, okay.